Well, hello. I know that we are the last panel, and I really appreciate everyone hanging around. We'll try to be cognizant of time since we're starting late. But I'm Natasha Braunwart, and I am going to have maybe the panel do a quick introduction of themselves, and hopefully we'll be leaving the day with a very positive and kind of fun, exciting project that everyone in this room can participate in, and also maybe encourage people beyond this room. I know that's come up a few times, that we keep seeing a lot of the same faces year over year, which is really great, but also can be really frustrating. So trying to cast a wider net beyond who is here is kind of what we're going to talk about.
Thank you. I'm Megan Cochran. I am a designer based in Oceanside, California.
I'm Hannah Smythe. I design toast jewelry, and I also work at DEH Solutions in New York City.
And I'm Eric Braunwart with Columbia Gem House, so you probably have heard that before.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, people in the room, who is aware of the MJSA Responsibly Sourced Design Challenge? Okay. So we've got about half the room. So Eric, maybe I could have you give kind of an overview of the MJSA Responsibly Sourced Design Challenge. And I know, I think I saw Rich back here as well. So Rich is with MJSA. So maybe you could just give a brief overview and talk about how the project has kind of grown and what that looks like.
Well, briefly, MJSA came to us a number of years ago and to see if we wanted to partner with them and sponsor a design challenge. And we talked about it, and it was a good idea. And I said, you know, together we thought, well, why don't we sort of rename it a little bit to the Responsible Design Challenge? And that obviously was sort of near and dear to our company. And MJSA thought, you know, sounded good. We could work together on that. Initially, it started out where there would be 9, each year there's 9 participants, 9 designers. And it started out where they would do a drawing or a rendering, and that would be published with their name each month in MJSA, which they do. And then at the end of that period, there would be a voting on who what people thought was the best design, you know, and this design was not just a design, there was a story with it, you know. Shauna would write a story like this girl was born in Malawi and she moved to the United States, and, you know, this sort of scenario, you needed to try and incorporate those elements into your design. So we did that for a couple of years, and then we thought, well, how can we expand it further? And so since we are the ones that would show the stones and say, these are the stones we'd like to design with, we said, well, why don't we give each of the 9 designers a full set of stones and metal to go with it and ask them to create that design. And then we would use those designs after voting for the winner. Then we would do an auction or a raffle on these pieces of jewelry to raise funds for a certain program, which changes each year. We did it for trying to provide training for, I don't like the word marginalized communities, but people that had less access to the jewelry industry. So that was last year. The year before that, I think it was a health program on the Navajo Reservation. So we do different things that relate to the gemstones that we're talking about also. And so actually it's grown a lot. We had, I don't know, a lot of designers apply this last year, and it's really tough when you're going through those and you see these great designs and these great bios and the stories that they tell, and to have to select 9 people.
Yeah, I think we had over 120 people reach out this year,
Yeah.
which we were not anticipating, and so that kind of created another challenge that we went through in trying to select who would participate.
So we look at different aspects of what we call responsible or supportive supply chains. And some are human, some are social, some are environmental. we try and look at it in a very broad sense, not just any one element. And so that's sort of how we got to where we are this year. And I think Tasha can fill you in a little bit more there.
I think you gave a pretty good overview. Let's see if I can get the next slide. Like you mentioned, there are a handful of gemstones that are also part of the design challenge. So each participant reads through a fictional story that MJSA puts out, and that's meant to be almost your client that you are creating a design for. And so part of that challenge is to also use the same set of stones. And generally, we have a lot of fun selecting these. We try not to be too challenging, but we do like to see what people will come up with. So Eric, I was also hoping you could maybe just quickly comment on the Cortez pearls, because that we'll kind of come back to that as we get further.
Okay, the Cortez pearls were sort of a core of this year's stones that we put in. And we've worked with the pearl farmers for many years now. And not because we were pearl dealers. People think of us as stone cutters, which is mostly what we do. But they had probably the best aligned social values of anybody we've ever worked with. So it really said, this is something where my wife's a pearl nut. I like pearls fine, but it was sort of one of those things that just said we had to start working with these people because the alignment was so good. And it is the only saltwater pearl farm in the Western Hemisphere. It's in Mexico on the Sea of Cortez.
So we'll come back to that, but some of the fun part of this is that Megan and Hannah, you both participated in the design challenge this year. You're in the process of finishing your pieces. So I was hoping maybe, Megan, maybe you can walk through your design a little bit and kind of your process and inspiration.
Yeah, for sure. You did a lot of the work for me by picking beautiful gemstones, so that was definitely appreciated. I have a background in illustration and graphic design, and I feel like the design process for visual design is kind of applicable to jewelry design, to architecture, to any kind of industry in which you're putting something together. Design principles just can be applied. So yeah, like visual hierarchy, balance, and emphasis on shape and color, allowing I wanted the gemstones to be able to breathe, so I pushed them a little bit farther out from each other. And I love geometry, I love clean lines, so I wanted the piece to be versatile and something that, in 10 years from now, it would still feel like a piece that you would want to wear. It doesn't feel necessarily caught in a certain era or decade. So yeah, I wanted to keep the piece something that you could just wear in a lot of different ways. The back of the silver piece with the tourmaline and the green beryl and the pearl can be worn on the back of the earring. And then I was hoping to also include in this design some hinged silver bails so that the two silver pieces could be worn as a double necklace, and then the earrings with the garnet and the gold could be worn on their own. Something that I really like with some newer ideas in jewelry are just being able to wear something in a different way, to just, have the most out of a piece that you can possibly have.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you comment on some of the kind of design directions that typically inspire your work, because I love to see how people's individual work comes through in this competition. And if you go and check out Megan's work, I can really see how this would kind of fit in with the stuff that you do already. And I know, Hannah, you have a very creative and kind of whimsical, almost humor that kind of pulls through in your designs. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about yours.
Thanks. And your piece is beautiful. So I initially was going to do a motorcycle because in the story, this woman loves motorcycles. So I was like, maybe I'll do that. But I was talking to my jewelers and my coworkers, and they're like, that's gonna be really hard, and you actually have to make this piece, so let's think about that. So then I kind of like thought what I usually do in my pieces and in my designs, and I like to make little faces in a lot of my pieces. So I was like, let me make this woman's face, and she's wearing fabulous earrings, and it will become a pendant. So that's kind of my like thought process throughout this. I basically the biggest challenge I am facing is drilling into the pearl, but other than that, like, I am lucky enough to work with jewelers in the Diamond District in New York City, and I work very closely with them with my job. So I'm just fortunate enough to have that opportunity and people to guide me and show me how to do certain things. And yeah, that's kind of where we landed with this piece.
Awesome, thank you. So one of the requirements this year as well was that you had to use at least one of each type of stone. So like Eric mentioned earlier, there are 9 participants. And so each year, the last few years, we've been taking these pieces and all of the designers spend and donate their time and energy into creating these, and then they submit them to be included in our fundraisers, and then they raise the dollars for whichever selected group it is for the year. So you can see the 9 designs. Not all of them are officially released as of yet, so you're seeing a sneak peek to all of them. But in October, they will be available to everyone. But we'll get a little bit more into that. So the fundraiser this year, we actually selected a group called CRIFS. So CRIFS is a wildlife rescue, rehabilitation, and research center based in San Carlos. So it's actually just down the street from Guaymas, which is where the Cortez Pearl Farm exists. So we kind of landed with them because we had reached out to our partners at the Pearl Farm and we were talking to them about their sustainability and kind of their environmental practices and asked them what is going around and happening in your direct community that you guys think could benefit from potentially having dollars raised to filter back into it. So Enrique very specifically and very excitedly sent us directly to Elsa, who is the founder of CRIFS. They work both in marine and terrestrial wildlife, and they do anything from, you can kind of see on the screen here, anything from baby turtle incubation and releases to rehabilitation of injured turtles. A lot of the time, fishing netting is like a huge issue in that area. But Elsa's team essentially is the group that is called in all of the Sonoran Coast. If anyone finds a chipmunk on the side of the road that's injured or sees an animal who's not able to dive or fly that might be stuck in the water. And so one of the kind of important parts on this slide as well is on the bottom left. You can see a turtle that's in, I guess, somewhat of a kiddie pool. So currently they do not have a location to do the rehabilitation process with the turtles. And so what they end up doing is every 2 days they have to drive to the ocean, fill up tanks of water, come back, refill their kiddie pools that their turtles are, trying to rehabilitate within. And then when they are trying to decide if they're ready to be reintroduced, they have created a rope harness, if you will, and they actually have gone to the Pearl Farm, the bay that the pearl oysters are within, and they've worked directly with the Cia Cortez group. and have done like test dives. So they have to see, can the turtle dive? Can it withstand and work against the current? But they do all kinds of work that honestly, there were so many synergies and the excitement that the Pearl Farm had to go with them was something that just made a lot of sense. So we went and visited them recently and learned a lot about what they do in depth, but for the sake of time, I'll leave it with that. But the other thing that Eric mentioned that is different this year, actually, so the last few years we've done an auction, and this year we decided to do a raffle. And part of that was kind of lessons learned and feedback that we got from people who had participated in previous years. But the other thing that happened, and this was just my personal experiences, I have a friend who last year she was like, oh, I love some of those pieces, I would love to participate, but I just don't have $2,000 to try to put in for an auction. And she's also somebody who has told me numerous times that, oh, I won't shop there because they don't pay fair wages, and I don't shop at that department store because I heard they use child labor. But then at the same time, her very favorite place to buy clothing is Shein. And so a little bit ironic there, but also it kind of like created this bigger conversation within our group talking about consumers that have no visibility because they're so focused on price and timing. And I think a lot of people in this room have experienced that we are seeing a big increase in consumers who are asking for information about where their stuff comes from, but there's also a huge mass market that is still very much so on the fast fashion trend. So my question actually to the panel here as well is that with the consumers who may not actually be the target audience for anybody necessarily in this room, do you guys think that it's still important to include them in this conversation of responsible sourcing, and why? That's kind of a big question, but.
I definitely think we need to be speaking to the fast fashion consumer. I'll just be transparent with everyone. I worked in fast fashion for 8 years, and it was a really emotionally depleting experience, but I came of age in the 90s where fast fashion and consumerism just became like the ideal and wasn't questioned. And I went to design school from 2003 to 2007, and no part of my curriculum was about sustainability in design. None of it, which is crazy. So I graduated and I got a job designing for big fast fashion brands. And there was a lot of it that I related to, in that I like fashion, I like self-expression, I like the creativity that goes into all of those things, but it's obviously not a sustainable system. It's built on exploiting people, it's built on exploiting the planet. So I thought, I think fine jewelry, that's not mass consumerism, right? That's an industry that doesn't have the problems that fast fashion does. And yeah, not true, but I think that there's room in this industry to move where fast fashion, like, I didn't see how would you move forward with that? How would you move forward with this model? It can't happen. So I definitely think there are ways to engage a fast fashion consumer, and I think that, fine jewelry obviously has an inaccessible price point for a lot of people, and I'm hoping that potentially working with responsible gemstones and gemstones that maybe are outside of what we traditionally consider fine stones. And I think there are ways to make jewelry accessible to a larger audience. And I think that there's a way to connect these stories and initiatives that would inspire someone to make the connection to a piece and not just, mindlessly buy something that has an opaque system behind it. But I definitely think we need to be speaking to all consumers, and if that means speaking to people to inspire them in whatever it is that they're going to make the better purchase, then I feel like we need to figure out like what will inspire them. Is it going to be this wildlife initiative? Is it going to be selling a raffle ticket for $25 in which they potentially can buy or walk away with a piece of jewelry that's much more expensive than that? I think there are a lot of ways to engage that consumer.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I have a lot of friends, they know that I work kind of in like manufacturing and do production. So I'm very aware of all of the issues that surround that. And I think people like around my age, they can't sometimes afford or think that they can afford things that are like responsibly sourced or they're ethically made. So I think that's like a big problem. But if they know that they can afford this or it's an option that they could afford, and doing stuff like this raffle, it makes it so that they do think I can afford these pieces and actively seek out things that maybe are more in their price point, or they just like realize, hey, I don't need to buy this Shein shirt, or I don't need, like a H&M shirt, and wait and just buy something that actually was made like in a vertically integrated system. So that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, I actually think part of it too is like mass media and mass audience, right? So we have people who say, oh, like I won't shop there because they saw the one headline of whatever it is. And with good intent, they truly have made a decision that they won't shop somewhere. But then they're also, it's almost like selectively deciding that this place is bad and that place is good, but then they're not actually realizing that your dollars, no matter where you put them, are backing something. It's backing some sort of supply chain. So I think just switching to sort of a format that hopefully can be something accessible and reaching people who that's kind of their mentality, and just to get them thinking about like the fact that the dollars that they put forward mean something. Do you have anything to add, Eric?
I keep adding these things that I learned way before most of you were born, unfortunately. But when I started in the industry, boy, this didn't exist. It just wasn't on anybody's radar. So in the last 20 years, and particularly the last 8 or 10, we've seen a lot more interest in it in jewelry, but just in all sorts of things. The environment, social rights, all sorts of things. So I think now there is a great opportunity for jewelry to take a lead in this and really set a goal that other industries can do too, because we're a small industry, we can be pretty nimble. Now, the challenge is we have to have some visuals, some sort of way to reach all these different people. And I'm too old to figure that out, so these young ladies get to do it. They have some ideas, so I'll stop at that.
So the fundraiser this year is specifically going toward the CRIF's 2024 goal of creating a saltwater rehabilitation tank along with a pump and all the supplies for that. So instead of having to house their turtles who are trying to heal in small kiddie pools that they can't really move around, and instead of having to get new water every 2 days, they will have a space that they can actually swim and do test dives in their own facility, and the pumps will allow them to keep the water for a full week at a time. So it would really eliminate a lot of back and forth. So even though that is their 2024 goal, we did want to share a very short video that was from the group because it's just one of those things that you can't not watch without smiling. So we'll see if it works. So in this video, you can actually see the skyline of San Carlos, and just behind it is Guaymas. So one of the big things that the group does as well, like I mentioned, was incubation and baby turtle releases. So one of the things that they do is also monitor the beach, because so many people ride their ATVs, and a lot of the time the baby turtles hatch and they follow the ridge line and they never make it to the water. And so this is just, a small clip of kind of the direction and the success of what they do and how they work. But also, again, it's hard not to watch that without smiling. And again, trying to find something that everyone can kind of collectively, regardless of if you're in the industry or not, because that's where a lot of our previous fundraisers have gone directly back into the industry, which of course we will continue to do in the future as well. But for this year in particular, we just wanted to find something that really could be just one doorway open to kind of reach more people, whether they're in the industry or not. So I think I mentioned it before that the raffle will take place in October. It will run simultaneously to the time frame that you can do voting for your favorite design. So out of the 9 that you saw, you can put your vote in for which design you think is the best. And then you can also buy raffle tickets for the piece that you might want for yourself or a gift for a friend or other. But this project does really rely on word of mouth. So, of course, we would love for all of you to share. We do have a QR code that goes to our landing page. You can sign up for emails just for notifications, or if you follow us on Instagram or any of the other designers who participated, we'll, of course, be sharing more as we get closer.
Yeah, you'll see a lot about it in the trade press, which is great, but then we're sort of talking to ourselves. So we do reach out to a lot of other press, and then we did get a notice from one of the reporters at the New York Times that she had sent it up to her editor to see if they could use it. So hopefully, we're working on this. We cast a wider net. But also, I really want to thank the designers because they were a critical part of this, and MJSA, because it really is a team effort. And I think if we're going to make the idea of responsible, supportive supply chains work, it has to be a team effort.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for these guys? It just felt good to watch, right?
I think we're all rooting for newly hatched baby turtles.
All right, thank you so much. Well, for those of you who think we're running late, we have never in 7 years finished a Chicago Responsible Jewelry Conference before 5:30. So I don't know what happened, but it happened. Susan, where are you? Oh. Okay, so Anna's going to announce the results, but Susan, come up, let's wrap up. Oh, you do have a few more minutes to donate. Hey, guys, would it be easy to pull up that other QR code we had you put up a few times today? Oh, God, you're always ahead of me. Nice job. Hey, big thanks to our AV team. They were amazing. So did we cover everything you wanted to?
I think this has been amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, again, for the support. And it was wonderful. And I want to thank all the speakers, everybody that flies in from all over the world. It's really appreciated. And I know we had a lot of people online as well thank you for that. But the community here in the room is amazing. And yes, thank you.
So Anna, you want to come up and we'll...
And Abby,
Where's Abby? There she is.
Brandy. Do you want to announce? That's how much was raised and the rest is being given by an angel donor.
Okay. So thank you again to everyone. We very much appreciate the support. So our announcement is that we raised $4,466. But that is not the end of the story. There is an angel donor that has covered the difference. So we have the coop.
I can't tell you what that means to the women of Morangi. I mean, I think maybe Abby can. Thank you.
So Abby keeps crying and then making the rest of us cry. But it's a really great note to end the conference on. Thank you for thinking of that, Anna. That was a great idea. So today was all about what can I do? And my question for you as we depart is what can you do? Because we don't want this to be just a conversation we have each year. And I know many of you are active every day. But if you're not active every day, get involved. Get involved with ethical metalsmiths. Get involved with helping the Responsible Jewelry Transformative, which is the nonprofit that owns the Chicago Responsible Jewelry Conference. Just get involved in some way, and we move forward. So I want to thank my team. I want to thank Kristen Kopaz, who left already, but she carries the weight of operations for this thing, and Elisabetta and Sherry and Kieran on the camera. And I want to thank Susan, because if you didn't have all these ideas, we would not have this conference. And this conference has been responsible for a lot of good, so thank you.
And I also have to thank Andre and her team for receiving, hopefully had their messages turned off, their alerts on text when I'm texting them at night, and all these things. And of course, Andre, because I couldn't do it without you. Thank you, Andrea.